Hi, everybody. Another excellent crowd today. Thanks for coming. I know it's nice and warm in here. Please join me in welcoming Colin Reed. He is here from WHOI, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to have some fun before we begin. I've been asked to take a selfie of the places I go, so I'm going to do it, and I want you guys all to wave when we do it. So everybody wave for me. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Oh, I missed you. One more. Hey! All right, great. Thank you. So, before we begin, free calendar to someone who can tell me why the names of the space shuttles are what they are. Why are the space shuttles named what they are? Why is one called the Atlantis? Why is one called the Challenger? Any guesses? Raise those of hands. All right. No calendar, except for when you walk up here. You got it. You get the calendar. I will repeat it. 1 second.
Thank you.
Well done. So the answer to that is they're named after oceanographic research vessels. So fun anecdotal story. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 12 years, and we fought space exploration money because they were getting billions and billions and billions of dollars to go and discover all these planets and everything else out there when we don't know a lot about our own planet, especially our ocean, right? And so fast forward, I moved to Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and my first year there, we accept a delivery of a new ship called the RV Armstrong, named after Neil Armstrong. What are we doing? Why are we naming this after an astronaut? They get all the money. They don't need any more credit. Well, it's our reciprocation back to them, and it just shows how much discovery and exploration is important for the human race, let alone just science and research overall. So thanks for entertaining me on that little icebreaker. I hope you enjoy the calendar. But for those of you that we do have more, I can provide some more if we run out. So, without further ado, up at the front here we have a few giveaways. Feel free to come up and take it afterwards. Oceanic is our version of National Geographic's magazine. It started in 1952, and we've run it all the way till now. In fact, I didn't realize in my office when I took the new job, we actually have the one from 1952 there. So I got to get that behind some glass there. Okay, so my name's Colin Reed. I serve as the Director of Community Outreach and Engagement. Unfortunately, I'm just a peon compared to our researchers, but I'm here to introduce you to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, how we get here, why it's important, why it's good for you to know about us, and then in hopes that someday we can actually bring our researcher here. She or he doesn't need to spend time telling you about what the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is. They can tell you about the awesome research that they do. Sound good? The takeaway that I would love for you to think about is our ocean, our planet, and our future. The life on Earth depends on the ocean in ways that are unimaginable, ways that we know we don't know, and then there's the unknowable. What have we not thought about? And that's what WHOI does. We depend on the ocean. We need to know more about it. And places like WHOI, and you'll hear me say WHOI, that means that's WHOI for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Here you go. Sounds like this, but I mean it's not WHOI, okay? It is WHOI. We are a group here. We are a large institution that was created in 1930, and we have over 1,000 employees. And just like the city of Walpole, it's a small, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is in itself a small village. And it takes all different walks of life and intellects and abilities to run the institution. We have a team of carpenters, we have a team of electricians, we have our fundamental researchers, we've got engineers, we've got writers, we've got billers that do all the invoice, we've got the finance people, and communicators like myself. It takes a team to do what we do. My objective today, aside from having you walk home with our ocean, our planet, our future, is to, in some cases, introduce you and engage you with what we do locally and regionally. That's my job. Some of you already know the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and have connections to it. So that's my job, is to reintroduce you and re-engage you, okay? So things that we want to go into today is why the ocean, why WHOI, but also I'm going to ask you at the end to come join us. Why the ocean? Charismatic animals, right? That's what we think about. Whales, penguins, krill, all sorts of wonderful things that we, as if we're not researchers, we only know a little bit about. But the ocean is extremely important. We have a little bumper sticker that we created a few years ago that says, take a breath, thank the ocean. A lot of the air that we breathe, terrestrial around the world, doesn't just mean anybody coastal. It's our air comes from the ocean, right? Life on Earth depends on the ocean. Something that we maybe lose sight of sometimes is just the enormousness of the ocean. So 71% of the ocean of the planet is covered by ocean. People have made the joke, why do we call it Earth? We should call it water. But 71%, and boy is it deep. We have, I don't know if anybody's seen the National Geographic recently, but Everest is much smaller than some of the mountains, or what we call the sea mountains, in Hawaii, right? And we're just getting to understand that a little bit more in terms of size and magnitude. The other one is just how heavy it is. My goodness, a gallon of water, 8 pounds, right? 8.5, something like that. What is that pressure? How heavy is that down at the bottom of the ocean when we're sending our robots down there, right? So how many of you, show of hands, have heard of the Alvin, our research vessel? Great. So this year, we celebrated our 60th anniversary of running the Alvin, close to 5,000 dives. And that means 5,000 dives of 3 people sitting in an 8-foot titanium sphere for minimum of 4 hours, usually 6 to 8. No bathroom, except a bucket. Not cozy at all. Actually, very cozy, not comfortable at all. But boy, does that, teach us about what's underneath, the surface of the water. The old Alvin got us halfway down into the ocean. The new Alvin that we just refitted can get us to 98 or 99% of the ocean floor. The ocean's important for oxygen, as we said, climate regulation, biodiversity. We looked at that first image of the whales, but there's a lot of biodiversity in there. Nutrient cycling. My wife is a chemical geologist. So her job is to look how geology is affecting the water column, how sediment that comes from the volcanic activity settles throughout and what that does. She even started looking into some of these batteries, right? So everybody has batteries on their cell phones, hearing aids, all sorts of other places, right? Where do those elements come from, right? There's a source on the bottom of the ocean that starts with a shark tooth or a little perturbation of the ocean floor, and over 500 million years or more, it adds and adds and adds, and it ends up collecting cobalt and nickel and many other things, right? So there's terrestrial places to get it, and there's also ocean. Now, oceanographers have known about this for a long time. They've wanted to go into it, but it's expensive. But now, we're running out of resources otherwise, so places are looking at that. So when we look at nutrient cycling, that's a big, huge picture. We think of the ecosystem, right? How water goes from the ocean back into the atmosphere. But that happens below the ocean too. The water cycle, just reference to, and a food source. But more importantly, let's zoom back out. Beautiful picture, right? The ocean sustains all life on our planet. If we didn't have the ocean, we would not be here. It inspires joy. Look at that. We've all been there. We've seen other people do that. We ourselves have been there. Yep. And wonder. You're under the water. Like, what is down there? And this is very shallow, right? Because they're just using normal diving gear. And light still exists, right? Light can still get down to that level. But what's below that? It supports the lives and livelihoods of folks. And it doesn't matter if you're in a fishing vessel nearby in one of these nice New England villages, or you're in a developing nation, right? The ocean supports the lives and livelihoods everywhere. Holds secrets waiting to be discovered. We talk about what we know, what we don't know, and what we have yet to figure out. So this is Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, WHOI, is known for finding hydrogeothermal vents. And what these are we call black smokers. And so it's volcanic activity that's pumping out lots of nutrients, a chemosynthetic environment, right? So it's pumping out nutrients down at the bottom of the ocean. Well, what the heck are they, and why are they doing it? And what we're still figuring that out, right? We found these in the 70s, off of which we have these large worms, my size, so 6 feet and below. They're huge tube worms. But around there, we have researchers to this day going down there and finding new underwater life that lacks pigmentation like we have from the sun, does not need photosynthesis, but it gets all of its energy from these smokers. And we're learning about them. And we're learning, how can they be important to humankind? It's part of that ecosystem, but are there more benefits? We don't know. We're figuring it out. And it has vast potential for addressing urgent problems. Geologists will tell you that the Earth isn't going anywhere anytime soon. When we hear climate change, everybody says we're going to save the planet. What are we really talking about? Humankind. We need a balanced Earth to live here, and we ourselves have an impact on the ocean, on the planet, in small ways and large ways. And that's what we're talking about when you hear those words, global warming and climate change. It's not, there are processes that we will never be able to interrupt because, what do they say? Mother Nature remains undefeated. And when we try to defeat her, she comes back, and unfortunately, she's winning in California. I feel bad for those folks, right? But in this, we can learn a lot to address urgent problems. And the urgent problem that we have right now is figuring out what the heck we're going to do with all the carbon dioxide that we humans are creating. And we'll figure that out, right? That's the beauty of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, WHOI. We look at problems as opportunities, not as the world's going to die. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out what the ocean can do, what it can do more of and less of. And now more than ever, we need to figure out breakthrough ocean science and technology. These are two important words, ocean science and technology. WHOI is fundamentally a basic research organization. What does that mean? That means our scientists go out and get their funding, typically from the federal government, to go do curiosity-driven research, meaning they don't have an end result beyond just curiosity and trying to figure out what's happening in the ocean. Technology represents an applied side. You can use technology to do basic research, and then there's an applied research. Applied research is when you are going to go do research for a given purpose. You want to figure out carbon dioxide and how we can put maybe more into the ocean. That's applied research. We want to look at, the end result. But at the end of the day, basic research requires what's called peer review. Peer review is you come out with your science, you write your paper, and now that I'm living in it with my wife, I've never had to do that level of checks and balances that she has to do, but it takes 1 to 3 years of sending your paper out to other people to make sure that your work is done right? And so when we think about basic research, when we think about oceanographic research done by places that are doing basic research like WHOI, you got to know that it's a decadal process. Our knowledge moves slowly. It's not like a pharmaceutical company. It's not like an industry company that's for profit. They move quicker because they're doing applied research. They know what they want to go out for. Ours takes decades. So sometimes when you hear a major problem in the papers and our scientists say, well, we don't know enough yet, that's because it takes decades to figure this out, right? So what do we want to do? We want to protect oceans and ecosystems and wildlife. Emperor penguins here. We want to fight pollution and climate change. And we want to sustainably meet humanity's need for, what is it? Water, food, energy, jobs. So food, shelter, water, etc. Little video now of WHOI to give you a little bit more of a background than that. And then I'll pick back up in a second.
Out where the seas are the deepest and the mysteries the greatest lies our future. The ocean is our last unexplored, ungoverned frontier. The life support system for our planet, inextricably linked to our climate and weather, and to the lives and livelihoods of countless people around the globe. But even against the ocean's vastness, humankind can be a formidable force. What happens next demands action that is rooted in scientific understanding and unvarnished truth, because our world stands at a fork in the road. In one direction, we watch the ocean being catastrophically altered beyond its ability to sustain us. In the other, understanding outraces exploitation, and we help steward and protect this most precious shared resource. What will be the legacy of the 21st century? Together, we can unleash the world's most creative minds, passionately dedicated to ocean science, engineering, education, and policy. Together, we can provide the expertise needed to know what works and a trusted voice to present the facts as we uncover them. Together, we can shape the future. We can inform governments, businesses, and conservationists. We can generate new knowledge in service of society. We can be the catalyst for change. It is more than our responsibility. It is the defining moment of our generation. We are explorers, students, and stewards of the ocean, and this is our time.
So, changing gears a little bit, we talked a little bit about the science and the types of science we do. But when we think about our ocean, our planet, our future, one thing that I do want to reemphasize is that science is important. Science has become highly politicized. It's a charged word right now in today's world, unfortunately. But it is important. We need to do more science to understand. Regardless of who you are and where you come from, we need to do more science. It doesn't move fast as people want it to be. It doesn't provide immediate answers. In today's world, we can go to our phones. We can find out the number of people in attendance at a Red Sox game on May 14th, 1962 in a matter of nanoseconds, right? But someone wants to know a quick answer about the ocean, the world. It's not that quick. And that's something we have to keep in mind. Earth science is important. What is earth science? Astronomy, geology, meteorology, oceanography. Earth science is important. We have fires in LA right now. What is causing that? A drought, right? Winds. We need to understand those more. For those of you that may have seen it a few months ago, we had northern lights that were, seen all the way down to Washington, D.C. in ways we had never seen before. If we didn't have science, we wouldn't have known that this was happening. And if we didn't have science, we wouldn't have had the phones and everything else texting everybody being like, get outside, go look at it, right? So that was taken by my wife in Woods Hole. She had just finished sailing and was like, am I seeing things? What's going on here? Recently, a couple top stories that we saw before the wildfires, we had a bunch of hurricanes coming up and through. That's science. One of our researchers jumps in an airplane to go see the eye of the storm to understand it, right? Goes into the middle of it. We need to understand more, but it takes time. This comes from one of our researchers, Dr. Chris Reddy. Chris was at the forefront of the Deepwater Horizon spill. He is an oil specialist. He can look at a drop of oil and tell you where it comes from with some analysis, not just on his hand, but he can do his analysis and he can tell you typically where it comes from. There are ships that sink. There are ships that run aground. There's all sorts of different things. It's his lab that's typically called to say, where is this coming from? Sometimes governments call him to say, we've got this problem. It's not coming from us. It's coming from somewhere else. And then he goes and figures it out. So he was at the forefront of the Deepwater Horizon spill. The poor guy he went through some major stress. BP and the oil, they were after him because he was telling the scientific story, right? But what's interesting here is there were so many different, and this happens all the time, every day, whenever you read the papers. I'm going to go through it a little bit, but everybody has their own need for information. So starting on the left, we have academia. And what I talked to you before, so the three rows are time, goal, and success, right? And the categories are academia, traditional media, social media, responders, so first responders, industry, and elected officials, right? I'm going to show you a little clip in a second about the movie Jaws. Jaws has a big anniversary this year, but in it there's an amazing interaction between the sheriff who's trying to protect everybody, the elected official that doesn't want to interrupt the vacation holiday, and the researcher from the institution on the mainland, WHOI, who all have different time scales, right? So using that as an example, academia, we talked about it. It takes decades. The goal is to educate, and what's a success of a researcher? Tenure, right? Traditional media, and social media, they need things in seconds and hours at most. They want to inform the public, they want to influence the public, right? And they get better ratings and exposure and everything, right? Responders, they need seconds and hours, but typically in industry, they want days and weeks. They want to control a situation. They want to protect reputation, safety, and profit, right? And last is elected officials. They're usually elected for years. They want some immediate answers as well. They want to represent, they want re-election. At the forefront of just that example of the Deepwater Horizon, you had all of these people trying to come up with answers. And if you couldn't come up with an answer fast enough, you were discredited. And this is the type of thing when you see in the papers, think about it. It takes everybody to come up with some of these answers. If we didn't have the U.S. Navy helping us on this, if we didn't have the military forces, thank you for your service, I see your hat, we couldn't have come up with some of these answers. It takes everybody, it takes a village. But think about these when you read the papers and you see things online, there's different time scales, right? So I'm going to play another little video. It's 3 minutes long. It is Jaws. This is the sheriff, the researcher, and the politician. And this is just an example of what I was just talking about. Maybe.
This is a great white, Larry. A big one. And any shark expert in the world will tell you it's a killer. It's a man-eater.
Look, the situation is that apparently a great white shark has staked a claim in the waters off Amity Island. And he is going to continue to feed here as long as there is food in the water.
And there's no limit to what he's going to do. I mean, we've already had 3 incidents. 2 people killed inside of a week, and it's going to happen again. It happened before. The Jersey Beach.
1916, there were 5
people
killed.
chewed up in the surf.
In 1 week.
Tell them about the swimmers.
A shark is attracted to the exact kind of splashing and activity that occurs whenever human beings go in swimming. You cannot avoid it.
If you open the beaches on the 4th of July, it's like ringing the dinner bell, for Christ's
Look,
sake.
Mr. Vaughn, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the wrecked hull of a boat out there, and it was the tooth of a great white.
It was Ben Gardner's boat. It was all chewed up. I helped tow it in. You should have seen him.
Where is that tooth? Did you see it, brother?
Entering self-doubt.
I had an accident way in.
And what did you say the name of this shark is?
It's a Carcharodon carcharius. It's a great white.
But you don't have the tooth. Look, we depend on the summer people here for our very lives.
You are not going to have a summer unless you deal with this problem.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark. I mean, we're going to have to...
We know the basics, right? He couldn't give an answer immediately, and he was immediately discredited. And that shouldn't be the way it is. That researcher knew, or who he was playing, knows about great whites. What Chris's new emphasis in his career, I mean, he still is the, he does the oil knowledge that he has, that kind of work. He's moved it over into the plastics field, but one of his big things is he's working with researchers to better tell their scientific story. Typically, researchers will say, well, what we don't know is, and lead with that. And what does that happen when it's someone that's aggressive that wants their information quickly? They're like, well, then you don't know. When, in fact, we have decades and decades. We've been doing oceanography since 1930. All of that is built on, like, to do science, you have to keep building upon the research that you have, right? So what he's trying to train our researchers to do is say, what we do know is, and with great accuracy and great probability, this, and this. And this is why we believe it's moving in this direction. What we don't know is this small piece. But what scientists are trained to do, because of this peer-reviewed process, is never say that they know everything, because they know it's constantly moving forward. So then they say, self-deprecatingly, well, what we don't know is, and that's the problem. It's a communication flaw, actually. It's not a knowledge-based flaw. In exact science. So, WHOI is known for exploration and discovery. When you think about what we do, we explore the ocean and we discover it. Doesn't matter if you are a geologist, if you're a biologist, if you are a chemist, if you are making robots. If you're making robots to do science, if you're making robots for the U.S. military, our job at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is exploration and discovery. That is our job. Always has been, always will be. Show of hands, do you know what this is? Titanic? Titanic, the 40th anniversary of the discovery of the Titanic is this year, this spring. Bob Ballard, one of the greats. It became declassified in the last few years, but he wasn't looking for the Titanic. He was looking for a sub, a nuclear sub that went down. With humans still on it, but it went down many years before, but it had a nuclear reactor on it, and they wanted to find it, the U.S. Navy.
Was that the USS Thresher?
The question is, was that the USS Thresher? I think so, yes. So he knew Titanic was nearby. They needed a flashy story because everybody was wondering why we were going down in the Alvin. To go look at the Titanic. Boy, that was a nice, like, hey, something shiny over here. Don't worry about us over there, right? So you're going to see a lot in the next few months. Keep your eyes open, especially in April. That's when we, with Bob Ballard and our research team, found the Titanic. There's going to be a lot of stories this year about it. So a little bit more about WHOI. We started down on the waterfront of Woods Hole. Show of hands, how many people have been to Woods Hole? When you came to Woods Hole, did you come to Woods Hole or to go to Martha's Vineyard? Martha's Vineyard? Woods Hole. Landfall. I gotcha. So we have a challenge. When we don't have one of these fancy ships over here, This is the Steamship Authority. When we don't have one of our fancy ships, we look like the service station of the Steamship Authority. And we have a lot of people that just come down this corridor on their buses or in their cars and go right over to the vineyard. And that's unfortunate for the research, right? Because we lose the research. Our job now is to make sure people know when they come down to Woods Hole or through Woods Hole, hey, world-class research happens here. It's not just at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It actually started in the 1800s with NOAA. The only building that is not federally owned but is a federal building is at the end of our pier. It is the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. They were set up in the 1800s, early 1800s, to do studies on cod. That was our big fisheries of the day. We needed to know what existed, how much we've fished it, and how much was left even back then, right? We still have that challenge today. Out of which came the Marine Biological Laboratory, which was associated with the University of Chicago. And then after the in the phase of world wars, we'll call it, there were a lot of lives at stake, as we know, in Europe. And places like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Vanderbilts, the others that had large foundations were doing a lot to save the lives of the big thinkers of that time in Europe. So the scientists, the doctors, the PhDs and MDs, and bringing them here to the United States. So in the 20s, they were doing this. In the late 20s, who became our first director, was working with the Rockefeller Foundation and said, you know what, we've got cod assessments, we've got biological, but this country needs oceanography. We need to think this through with the federal government. So the National Academy of Sciences commissioned a report, paid for by the Rockefellers, I believe, and out of which they came out with, we need one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. On the West Coast, they had already been operating, but they became formalized. It was the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. They have since become part of the University of California system, so they're part of the state budget, which is good and bad. Because when the state budget wants to cut things, they get cut sometimes. Versus Woods Hole was the East Coast Oceanography Center, and we remain independent. We are a nonprofit. We go and we get our grants. Our researchers go and get their grants predominantly from the federal government. And that research pays for people like me to come and talk to you while they're doing their research. Our director does not say we're going to go out and do something. Our researchers do what they want to do. They go and write proposal after proposal after proposal after proposal. They have to raise their own salary. They have to raise my salary. So I don't take this lightly. My job and everybody that communicates about the research that we do, we're built on the shoulders of these researchers. It's important that they're doing what they're doing. Boy, I wish I could, raise enough money for them so that they didn't have to write these proposals. But, that's the nature of the beast here. So we're the world's independent leader in ocean research, exploration, and education. Again, emphasis on independent. The federal government cuts things, well, we adjust. State government doesn't really have a play into our budgets that much, but it's not always what you sell, it's how you sell it, right? So during the Cold War and before that, we were doing oceanographic research for the benefit of national security. After the Cold War, we were doing it for curiosity-driven research because the funds were going through the National Science Foundation, and those words were different. We still did the same basic research, you just have to name it. So in this current, right now, a sailing term, we're in the irons with your sail. We don't know which way the world is going to go right now in terms of Congress funding things. It's either going to go strongly to the military again, or it's going to stay. And we have to be flexible. We just have to change our words so that we can keep doing this. We have unparalleled expertise in ocean science, engineering, and marine operations, and we have extraordinary access to the sea. We have the research vessels. We have the big world ocean class. We can go anywhere in the world. We also have local craft. We also have local robots. So I'm hoping in the future, if I do well enough today, you'll invite me back and we'll bring in some more folks that can talk about these specialties. And finding solutions will take collaboration, creativity, and courage as we tackle some of these. And it is a big, Venn diagram, right? Deep scientific understanding, extraordinary access to the sea, unmatched engineering. Where's WHOI? We're right in the middle of that. And so we went from the enormity of and the importance of the ocean. We talk about the importance of ocean research and having a better understanding. Here's just a couple research examples of what we do. We talked about the Alvin. We're in year 61 now. I invite you all to come down, and that's part of the join us. The original Alvin sphere. So all this stuff that you see, that's just syntactic foam. Everything that you see in white and red and all these machines, that's just add-ons. Where the humans sit is a titanium sphere, which is just in this front third, right? The original sphere we have out on Water Street, and you can come and check it out. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. We have people going to space. We're jumping on that funding vehicle of NASA and other places, right? Because one of our researchers who's a geologist is working with NASA, because NASA wants to go, and they have found a moon of Jupiter called Europa, and it has ice. If it has ice, it means it has water. If it has water, there's a high likelihood that there are microbes in there. When we talk about alien life, it's not necessarily human form. Alien life is also microbic form, right? So NASA knows how to get there. They don't know how to get into ice or under ice. We also know that there's hydrothermal activity coming out of the surface. So between the surface and the ice, there's hydrothermal activity. Going back to what we're known for in the 70s, we discovered hydrothermal activity on Earth. Well, we're partnering with them to go out there. It's going to take us, I won't be alive when they get out there, but we're developing the technology now to get us out there. It's kind of fun, right? It's not just us, but those principles apply. And oceanography benefits from the next 30 to 40 years of technology development that we can use on our own planet while NASA has their goals set on going far away. So it's a win-win. Where we're going, we've developed Orpheus. Orpheus is the length of one of these tables, stands about this high. What we wanted to get it to someday, perhaps, would be this size. But it has to start as a craft vehicle. And that's made to go to the deepest parts of the ocean, land, and take photos and help us sample what's happening down there. I talked about the Europa Clipper mission. That just went up with its satellite. It's going to take, might get this wrong, I think 5 years to get there or longer, but then we're going to start monitoring and getting the information back. I led off with this. But these are the names of the space shuttles. Here's what they're named after. Atlantis being the original research vessel that the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution purchased. Thank goodness for safety, because there's some photos here of them tossing over TNT to do acoustic sounding while smoking cigarettes. Sometimes OSHA is good. But yeah, we've got Discovery, we've got Atlantis, Columbia, Endeavour, Challenger. For those of you that watch CBS Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley, big fan of that. My dad taught me that. Occasionally we get in there, and this is a story about right whales. We'll skip it today because it's a little bit long and I want to take questions. But this is about whales and ship strikes, right? There's a fundamental researcher that does the basic research on right whales. There's an industrial need to adjust how these big ships come in and out of port, right? And you have to merge those two. So our researchers, with some conservation groups, with the industry, are teaming up to figure out how can we get these large ships that's really hard to slow down and speed up and move, how can we tell them ahead of time that there's whales in the area so that we can limit this ship strikes, right? So we're working together on that. It's an amazing opportunity. So you can find this online, and I can make sure that your folks here have that link so you can come and see. We'll move on. And here we are towards the end. I'm asking you to join us. We are a service provided by your tax dollars, right? We're a nonprofit, but 80% of our funding comes from taxpayers by way of the National Science Foundation, the U.S. Navy, NOAA that does the weather satellites and others. Our job is to make sure we're spending every dollar of yours efficiently and effectively. But what more can you do? Well, first, help us meet the moment by, when we say meet the moment, we're trying to unleash talent. We're trying to drive more discovery. We're trying to unlock innovation. We're trying to, this is kind of new. We've always done it, but in today's world, we need to inform more action. And we need to do it in a way that is understandable, digestible, not like what was happening in the scene from Jaws where it was rapid and crazy, but informing action in the ways that we need to do it. So first and foremost, how can you do it? Stay informed and support science. Check out what's actually written and read between the lines sometimes on the articles you read in your major newspapers and publications. Doesn't matter which one, just take the time to think about what's being written, right? Another way to stay informed and support science, I invite all of you to come up. Actually, I'll put it over by the coffee just to make it easier in case people want to chit chat and don't want to wait. If you want our newsletter, and it comes out, I think weekly or every couple weeks, but it talks about the research that we're doing. It's a great digital newsletter. Sign your name and your email if you have one. If you don't, let me know, and we can send up some of these when they're published. So that's one way you can stay engaged. Organized and individual tours. I don't know if the capacity exists, but oftentimes when I give talks to communities like this, there are avenues of coming down as a group. I would recommend not doing it in July and August, but in May and June when the weather's good, or even September, don't tell anybody I told you this, but September on the Cape is the best. But come on down. We're going to give you a tour. We'll show you behind the scenes. We'll show you some of the robots. We'll show you some of the fundamental things, but the door is open. If you want to come individually, we have tours mainly in the summertime that you can sign up for. The folks here in the office have my email address. Feel free to email me anytime. My team can give you a tour if we don't have an organized one already, or if it's filled up, we can work on something. But if you want to do something with the senior center here, I would be happy to help coordinate a group activity for you to come down and meet some of our researchers. We're only an hour away, and it's an easy hour when it's not peak season. And we got to do it before the bridges go under construction. Become a member, right? What does it mean to become a member? You sign up. You can donate 50 cents. You can donate $50 if you want to. You can do more than that. But becoming a member keeps you engaged a little bit more. And you know that every dollar that you spend goes into our research. Donate plan giving is a way that we do it, and that's an open way. I myself, my wife and I have signed our house away in the future. It's an interesting way to do it. And then this is a weird one that I put in there. Holiday and celebration gifts. I'm not doing it as a ploy just for WHOI, but I actually think if you think about the gifts that you want to give to your folks, support small businesses. That's a very important thing. But if you actually happen to support other nonprofits or mission-driven organizations that also have a gift shop, buy from them, buy from us, because that goes directly, those proceeds go directly to support the research or whatever they might be doing. So it's a ploy for WHOI, but it's also for any of the other things that you do. It might be better than, a Toys R Us or a Walmart. No disrespect to those companies, but the nonprofits, really benefit from that, and that's why we have gift shops, because it helps put emblems like this out in the public so more people know, but it also supports our research. So we're back at the title slide. Thank you very, very much. I'm humbled to be in such an amazing audience. Thank you for your time, and I want to take some questions, and I will repeat the questions so you can all hear the questions.
On your slide it says become a member. If you are a member, do you get information sent to you on a regular basis? Because I was thinking about giving it to my family.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, if you become a member, do you get information on a regular basis? Yes, it's it's a deeper dive than just the regular newsletter that you can sign up for. It's more in depth. I just learned, I went to the Boston Aquarium yesterday. They have 3 different levels of information that they provide. One's called a skimmer, swimmer, and diver. Our newsletter is like a skim, right? You're getting a lot of everything, but just high level. Swimmer, when you become a member, you start getting more in depth. And then for those of you that want to start deep diving in some of the stuff, that's the next level, okay? While I'm taking questions, I'm going to put the sign-up sheet over by the coffee, so go for it.
Yes, now could you explain or tell us about the involvement of other countries with Woods Hole?
Yeah, so the question was the involvement of other countries with Woods Hole. We are not strictly a national big... Oh, I didn't see the chocolates here. I'll stay away. The international, sorry, get the chocolate out of my mind. We work internationally. We do not have limitations. John Farrington is a great example. He has worked all over the world. We have researchers that come from all over the world. In fact, right now, one of my big roboticists was in the middle of the Atlantic, traveling, and they were getting stuck in this seaweed. We're getting these massive amounts of seaweed that we had never seen before. And so he was going out on a different mission, but he's like, what the heck is going on? And they're starting to look into it more. So when we talk about international, this is one example of many. He actually is partnering with some of our researchers that do river-based aquatic research, right? And we're finding that this seaweed is happening because of runoff from the Congo River that has fertilization issues coming into the thing and then coming up from the Amazon. We don't know exactly why or what, but this is an example of how someone just came into a circumstance and was like, what is this? And then the international collaboration just happens. So it's all over the world. I don't know the number of countries. I'm guessing we are probably 50 to 100 countries actively every year. Follow up?
Oh, yes, just another question. What is current, or do you know of any current information or research that's been done to prove or disprove the Bermuda Triangle?
Ooh, prove or disprove Bermuda Triangle? No, I don't know anything about that. I'm not going to even venture a guess because I probably would be wrong. Similar to the Bermuda Triangle, I originally am from Vermont. I grew up in Vermont. And in Glastonbury, there's a Bermuda Triangle of something in one of the mountain areas. I don't know if it's folklore or if it's real, but, everybody has their story. So I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
How about fishing nets with whales?
Okay, and?
Do you have a big problem?
We do. I'll combine questions.
Nothing can be done?
We're with a Navy stationed in Western Australia now. That's a place where it's interesting with every bitey or poisonous thing in the world is in the ocean.
Yeah, so...
We had every anti-venom in the world with us.
Yeah, so we're talking about Australia and all the venomous things that exist in Australia. It is very interesting. And
diving, and we got a thing, small whales.
yeah.
I went once with my
Nice.
and I said, I'm going to the pool from now on. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Rockfish.
But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. But one question that was asked was fishing nets and whales. That is a known problem. Same thing with lobster traps and their lines. So we have researchers right now. Our big whale researcher, you may know him, is Michael Moore. Michael's worked around the world on the plight of the right whale. The numbers are just being decimated. Ship strikes, entanglements, so on and so forth. And it's a precarious. We have researchers on not necessarily both sides of the issue, but they're looking at the whole thing, right? And so when we talk about what's on Jane Pauley, the CBS Sunday Morning, that's an example of how we're trying to work with industry to change the industry. We're not trying to add more time and therefore more money on the goods that are delivering. We're trying to make things safer. But with the nets, we are making some improvements. I think the fishing industry is one that, they have their lives and livelihoods are based on the fish. So we're trying to find ways that are economical, mutually beneficial for both. And one of the things that we invented is a ropeless buoy for lobsters. So typically you have a buoy floating on the surface, tied to a lobster pot down at the bottom. Why is it that way? Because that's the way it was invented. But what we have now with the technology is you can have your lobster pot on the bottom, tied to a weight. Boat comes over. Boat and weight communicate to each other. You send a ping down, and it releases the lobster pot tied to a line. We get the lobsters, and then you ping it down, and it reels it back in. Is it perfect? No. Is it in a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Is it expensive? Yes. But so were the lines when we were, inventing the current lobster pot system back in the day. You have to adjust. There's some early adopters of this technology as we're inventing it and deploying it. And there's a large, crew that aren't adopting it yet because it is too expensive. But it's kind of like the image of the big robot trying to get to the small one. It takes incremental steps. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Yeah, you had a question.
Referring to the Bermuda
Triangle.
Magnetic
Fields.
I watch a lot of these programs.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, why can't they put radar, like these big cruise ships, big ones, why can't they know how to detect other things, weather and everything else, to avoid hitting the runners or whatever, getting, cutting into the whales?
You are absolutely correct. Why can't they put the statement is why can't, or the question statement is why can't they put more radar or technology onto a ship? They are. They understand it's more of a PR reputational reason than actually caring about the whales, unfortunately. At the end of the day, they need to, like the airline industry, they need to get you from A to B for a certain amount of money. Anything more than that takes more gas, so on and so forth. So they don't want us diverting them off. But can we figure out ways for an alert system for them to, avoid the strikes? We're working on that. And it is a combination of sonar. It's a combination of radar. It's a combination of, there's different technologies in there. Some laser, some not, some acoustic. There's a lot of acoustics out there. And we're doing it. There's interest now. There was never interest before. And the more pressure we put on these is going to be good. Now, to that end, we're also working with the shipping industry and the cruise industry to start putting more sensors on their ships. So why go and invent a whole new infrastructure if they're already out there, right? What can we put on to start understanding more science? Well, dolphins are used in various ways, yep. So, anyways, that's a good question as well.
A comment and then a question.
Yeah.
Today's Globe had an article about they were trying to cut the speed of the ships coming through, and today they decided against it because of the ferries going to the islands. So that was one thing. But I've got a question about China is looking to do mining in the ocean, and what do you think of all of this?
So two question statement. One in the Globe today was a article specifically pointing to the previous topic, which was ship speed in ports and near ports and near shore, and how there have been decisions, and they're ongoing, of to slow down or to not slow down. This is part of the learning curve. We're hoping that if we can get them to slow down, it's not going to affect things too much. There are economics to everything, unfortunately, and when people are driven by profits, they have to meet stakeholder. As much as we don't like it, that's their formula. They have to answer to the investors, and that's hard. I went into business during the pandemic. I went online and got my MBA, and it's driven into you. It's like, you have an investor, you have to return a certain amount of investment depending on what you're investing in, if they're investing in you. And that's the challenge of for-profit, right? I lost the second one. China, thank you. Deep sea mining. That is something that you're going to hear a lot about in the next few years. The United States has not signed the International Law of the Ocean Treaty. We did not sign that because that would prevent our U.S. Navy from protecting the world. We would not be able to go into some of the places if we were signed on to it. Because we're not signed on to it, the United Nations can hold us, not allow us to do certain things. One case in this example is the International Seabed Authority, which has regulation over the seabed in international waters, is allowing countries to lay claim and stake to certain areas that have these nodules that I was telling you about, that have magnesium and nickel and a few other elements that are extremely important to our batteries, our cars that have batteries, military application. So a lot of countries are signing up to go and get these off of the seafloor, mining, right? The United States can do its own within its own EEZ. So there's a certain, from shore out to the ocean. It is small. It is our own exclusive economic zone. Within those, there's territorial waters. I know too much about this because my past life, I was doing research on whales and ocean pollution. And in order to bring whale samples in, you had to know all this terminology, but then the regulatory didn't know all the things. And then we would work with small countries that had kings, and the king would say, go and do all this work in our waters. And they'd use the wrong terminology, and we'd bring them back. And the US government says, he said this, and it's actually, we can't do it. Wait a second, hold on, he said we can do it all. Anyways, back to your question is, all the countries are doing it. They have yet to really start doing it. Places like WHOI and others are trying to slow it down a little bit to understand the impact. Our job, everything that we do when we explore and discover, we have to quickly figure out, if we haven't figured it out already, what was the story before, what the story is currently, so we can help figure out the future. We did that with the Deepwater Horizon spill, right? The minute it happened, the academic research community went on their own credit cards down to start doing as much research that they could get done before the oil affected more, right? It's the same thing here. We're trying to figure out what the implications are for that, and we're going to hear a lot about it because the current incoming administration has a desire to look at what it would mean to do more deep sea mining. But is it going down with a robotic arm and picking something up? Probably not. Guessing it's going to be a bulldozer style where they can just get everything all together, but we don't know. So we have to figure that out, and that's the role for WHOI. As an independent, research-based organization, we can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly of a proposed thing, and that's our job. Our job is to be unbiased. Our job is to be peer-reviewed, to make sure that the truth is told. Whether they listen to it or not, that's the prerogative of the people receiving it, but that's our job. Our job is to give you unvarnished, unbiased truth. And yes, it's going to happen. It is one that was not economically viable for a long time, but given the politics of the world and where we can no longer get these types of valuable resources, they have to look elsewhere, and that's why we're looking at the ocean floor. The good part is they're understanding that there's an important ocean out there. The bad part is there's some challenges that exist. Another example, one of our big projects, the ocean twilight zone, that's where sunlight stops, but it's not the deepest part. We know that there's a lot that happens in there. We don't spend a lot of time in there. We call it the ocean twilight zone, and it turns out it is home to the largest animal migration on planet Earth. When we think of migration, we think the birds going north to south, south to north, hemisphere to hemisphere, right? Or we think about the wildebeest, right? No, it happens daily. This huge biomass goes up and down with the sun and the moon. And in that, this biomass, they're all fish no bigger than our pinky. We're talking billions and billions and billions of pounds of this. And countries have figured it out. And they said, you know what, we can use this for animal feed, for fertilizer, for all sorts of different things. And so they're putting these big vacuums down and they're sucking it up. We found out about this by happen chance. And so our job is to jump in, quite literally, and figure out what is going on there so that we can, understand the ramifications of what it would mean to do this. They have these big floating factories. They go out, they suck it up, and when they come back, everything's in a box, ready to be shipped. It's kind of crazy. Anyways, I'm right at time. Thank you so much. I'll hang around for a little bit, but I appreciate all of your time coming here today and learning more.